So I'm going to be doing my presentation on Tay-Sachs disease. This is a brief history of the disease. So the disease was discovered by two scientists. Warren Tay discovered a cherry red spot in the retina of the eye of one of his patients in 1881. And this was one of the key indicators for the disease. Bernard Sachs was responsible for describing the changes that occurred within the body, the genetic nature of the disease, and the medical cases surrounding Tay-Sachs disease with all the information that he had available. And so the disease was named after these two scientists and doctors. A brief overview of the disease: it's a fatal autosomal recessive neurodegenerative genetic disorder, which means that the neurons and the nervous system within an affected patient slowly begins to destruct over time, and most patients usually die within a few years after birth. So this disease is a result of mutations in the hexa gene, which is located on chromosome 15, as you can see in the diagram to the right. The gene is responsible for producing an enzyme in lysosomes called beta-hexosaminidase A. And the reason that the mutation is so drastic is because it results in impaired function in the brain and the spinal cord. The mutations in the gene allow the fatty substance produced by the enzyme to build up, which causes damage and deconstruction. And normally this is regulated and controlled by the hexa gene. In terms of inheritance and probabilities, both parents must be a carrier because it is a recessive disease. So if both parents are a carrier, there's a 25% chance of having a child who's affected by the disease and shows the signs and symptoms of Tay-Sachs disease. And the diagram to the right describes why it's 25% for probability. Tay-Sachs disease is generally more common in certain heritages like Irish or Jewish, but anyone is susceptible to getting the disease. There's approximately 16 individuals who are diagnosed with the disease in the U.S. each year, and regardless of how low the number may seem, it's one of the most common genetic disorders. So in terms of signs and symptoms, babies will exhibit an unusual startle response to noise, and that's one of the first indicators. They also have retardation, meaning that they have slow mental development or movement in relation to what infants of their age normally have. They also have hypotonia, which means that they have decreased muscle tone, so they might struggle to balance or keep their head up, and this is also known as floppy baby syndrome. They have armosis, which is blurred vision, so it might seem like they aren't able to see things as clearly or pick up on different signals within their environment because of this. They also have other symptoms. One of the things that you can see in this picture is the cherry red spot in the eye, which is what Warren Tay found, and it's a common symptom of the disease. In terms of cultural significance, there is currently no treatment, so all Tay-Sachs affected individuals do eventually die. There has been an increased effort for funding the research and the clinical trials related to the disease, but there's still a long ways to go in terms of developing a long-term solution. It has a significant impact on family and parents because the patient isn't able to advocate or explain the symptoms they're experiencing because they are infants and they're so young, so they're unable to speak. So the parents are really the advocates for the disease and creating awareness within society. And then this also goes to the point that this disease does affect many individuals, whether it's just the patients or if it's family and parents, and there has to be an increased public awareness and advocacy in order to increase funding because they only get funding from private investors and then also organizations like the National Institute of Health, and a lot of funding is necessary in order to develop a gene therapy solution or another source of treatment to solve this disease. So that is my presentation on Tay-Sachs disease, and thank you for listening.